Hello, everybody. My name is Benjamin Erlacher. I'm one half of this YouTube channel, the Ben and Daniel, The Way. We thought it would be best to start off our channel with having two different individual testimonies so that you would get to know who we are better before we start talking about different topics. That way you kind of get a grasp of who we are, what authority we have to speak on certain topics, and just kind of get to know why we're doing what we're doing. This video for me, I've shared this testimony on different retreats and at different small groups, and whenever I share this testimony, I just envision talking to a few people in my family that I love dearly, that I know that if I were to be able to share this with them, would hopefully help them to understand who I am and understand how sorry I am for some of the things I've done. And so it's really, I guess, kind of therapeutic, very spiritual for me. I love doing it. I love sharing about myself because I think there's so many people out there that have what they think is, a backstory that's too much, that is irredeemable, and really just being able to see that God can work through anyone. Because there was a point in my life where I thought my life would end, and God said it wasn't over yet. So, yeah, I'm going to get into it. I'm 23 years old. I was born and raised here in Washington State. Born in 2000. I was born again a month after I was born into the Catholic Church, and my mom and dad made sure to raise me under the vows that they took to make sure that I would follow God and know who He is to the best of their ability until I took my baptismal vows at confirmation, through the sacrament of confirmation. Very good, very normal childhood. My dad was a mailman, made sure there was always food on the table and a roof over our heads. My mom homeschooled me and my other siblings, and so she always made sure to incorporate God into our schooling, made sure that we were serving others. Part of our school would be to go and help out our grandparents and other neighbors as part of community service, and just making sure that we're serving the Lord through our actions and through our kindness. I was an altar server from middle school all the way through high school, went to youth group. My mom was born Baptist, and so she was very familiar with the Bible and made sure that we knew all of our Bible stories growing up, Noah, Moses, Samson, all the way to Jesus, right? And going to youth group, I would always be able to provide a biblical answer for most things when small group was up, and I just felt like I was a really good Christian. I felt like I knew what I was doing. I was very overconfident in a lot of situations growing up, and just honestly thought I was better than everyone. By the time I was 12, I started rebelling hardcore against my parents. If they said it was bedtime, I said no. If they said you're grounded, I would walk out and proceed to go hang out with my friends, eat whatever I wanted, do whatever I wanted, kiss girls that I wanted, without their guidance and without being obedient towards them for the betterment of myself. I just felt like they were holding me back. I felt like I could do better than them, and as soon as I could, after I graduated high school, I made sure that I could get as far away from them as possible. So I ended up going to college, and basically my mom helped me move into my dorm, and then I told her I'm not going to see you till Christmas, and I didn't that year. Uh, and I thought that everything was going to go great for me. You know, I was a fairly popular guy in high school. I played a lot of varsity sports. I had a few girlfriends, and I just thought I was the stuff. And when I got to college, life was a lot different. Uh, I wasn't able to make friends as easily as I thought I would. I wasn't so great with the ladies. You know, I wasn't big enough to play college ball like I thought I would be able to. Um, just because you're a hot shot in high school doesn't mean that you're going to be a hot shot in college. And so when that happened, I went from being at the top of the world to being very lonely and kind of in a dark place. But I didn't want to admit it to anyone, and I definitely did not want to tell my family and parents that I missed them and that I wanted to see them, because that would be a show of weakness, and that, I needed them. And I didn't want anyone to think I needed them. I wanted everyone to know that I could handle life on my own and that I could figure things out on my own. I didn't need anyone else in my life. And that's going to come up to play throughout the rest of the course of this testimony, is me not needing anyone that I know better. So we get to the beginning of a winter quarter, and obviously it's been 3 months of being lonely. Still haven't seen my family. My girlfriend that I was dating in high school broke up with me, and I was just in a lot of pain during those first 3 months of schooling. And so when I met this other girl in college, who I had known in high school a little bit, I thought I'd never see her again after graduation. We parted ways, and I thought that was that. I had always had a bit of a crush on her, and I found out later that she had a crush on me throughout high school, but we were always dating other people. And anyways, became reacquainted with her, started hanging out with her and her friend group, started to feel like I had friends again, started to feel like I was attractive again, started to feel like I was cool again. And so when her and her boyfriend at the time broke up, I stepped in and decided to have a relationship with her. And I remember thinking at the time, so I was still a virgin when I came to college, because, again, thought I was a good Christian. I wanted to follow God to the best of my ability. And, I'd always told myself and promised God I'm going to save myself till marriage and whatnot, and I'm going to only have sex with one woman the rest of my life. That was my intent and my goal. But as, when you're on a college campus and you're seeing everyone else hooking up, it's not necessarily peer pressure, but it's definitely a pressure of like, I'm missing out on something in my life. There's something that I'm not able to do. And so for a bit, I thought that, God's holding me back. What's the big deal of not being able to get loose with a girl every once in a while if I really love her? And I started to convince myself, well, I could see myself getting married to her, and, we were in love, and, like, if I'm going to marry her, what's the point of waiting? No one waits to get married anymore. There's no virgins out there anymore. I should just, times have changed, therefore I think maybe God can change, and maybe he'll compromise with me a little bit. He knows my heart, right? And so I ended up giving up that part of myself that was still virtuous to her. And throughout the course of time, ended up having a child with her, ended up living with her, ended up getting engaged to her. And, I ended up dropping out of college. I started working at a top tier restaurant called Wendy's. Might have heard of it. It's a fast food joint. And there I was told, you're never going to be anything, you're too slow, you're not good enough at your job, you're not, and if you know anything about me, when someone says that, I'm like, bet I'm going to be the best one. And so within a year, I went from being the garbage boy to being a shift manager, and then like 6 months later went from that to being an assistant to being the general manager, which is the top position you can get within a fast food restaurant store. And there was no one above me except a district manager and a regional. Everyone else at the store was under me at the time, and I was the big boss. And so I had the beautiful girl, I had the child, and I had the job that was making me more money than I would have made if I had stayed in college and pursued my psychology degree. And once I had all that, all the material things in the world that everyone's told to pursue, I went from telling my parents I could do better than them and I don't need them to, I started falling away from God, obviously, as I continued to fornicate and basically live with a woman without being married to her. I started to ask God, like, why do I need you? I've built all this wealth by myself. I've gained this beautiful woman on my own. I have a beautiful child, and you didn't help me get any of it. So why do I need you? You're holding me back. I know better than you. And God allowed me to pursue my sin. And, you'd think that when you tell God to F off, that things would start to go bad for you. But honestly, for another year and a half, things were going great for me. I continued to get raises. Daughter was very beautiful. My relationship with my fiance at the time wasn't perfect, but we were getting over some issues that we had, and things were starting to go good for me. And as I just started to peel God off of myself more and more, my sin nature came out more and more, and I started to change both spiritually and physically. I gained a bunch of weight. I went from being a 240-pound guy to being a 315-pound guy. I went from going to church every single Sunday to I hadn't been to church in 2 years. I went from being a respectable guy, nice to other people, to being a bit racist, sexist, telling other people that they were stupid. I abused my power at my job as a manager, and fired people that I didn't want around, and talked to different girls that I shouldn't have been talking to because I was with this other woman. And things just started to get to my head because I started to tell myself, I'm God, I can do when you leave God out of your life, you become God, and you start to build this complex of like, there's no one here to stop me. All morality was just like leaving me, and I was just free to do whatever I wanted, but that freedom came at a price. The cost of sin is death. So fast forward, I'm starting to get fed up with my management job at Wendy's. I want more money. I want to be able to give my family a bigger space to live. I want a better car, right? And so I end up getting into this multi-billion-dollar company called Ecolab as a pest control technician, and basically double my income. Things are starting to go great, right? It's a traveling job. I get to go to Idaho every other week to train, and then, get my license and be able to make all the money in the world, right? And as I'm going through this training, my fiance at the time and I were not doing so well. We were getting into a lot of fights. I was starting to get very verbally abusive and borderline even physically abusive at times. I was a very scary guy when I got angry. I had a huge temper. If you triggered me, I would I wouldn't necessarily hurt you physically, but I definitely made it shown that I could hurt you physically if I wanted to. I would yell, I would hit walls, I would. There was a point in time where I got angry with the fiance, and I used my daughter to scare her. I held her upside down, right? Um, and just different things. I would uh, mentally abuse people and borderline physically abuse. So it got to a point where she couldn't handle it anymore, and while I was on one of my business trips, we were planning on going on a little mini vacation. I was going to have a 5-day weekend coming up, mostly paid for, and God was already starting to reach out to me in my life, and I knew I had to change, and I was telling myself, I'm going to be a better husband, I'm going to be a better father, I'm going to start being more present, because I'm gone for weeks at a time, and when I'm home, I just play video games and don't help clean, and I'll go hang out with friends instead of hanging out with my family, and I was just doing my own thing, but God was already starting to reach out to me, telling me I needed to change. So I was telling myself, on this vacation, I'm going to be the perfect husband. I'm going to be the perfect father. We're going to mend things. It's going to be great. It'll be a new start. I've got this new job. Things are going to get better. And I was all excited. I was going to call her on the phone. I remember I got off work a little early that day, and I was all excited. I was going to call her and say, hey, babe, I got off early. I'm coming home. Let's get packed up and go. And didn't get an answer. Found out it was because I missed a payment on my phone service, which I think was a God thing, to be honest. So I get home, and the last thing I see as I drive into our apartment complex is her driving out with her dad, and I'm like, oh, what are you guys doing? And she's like, well, we're going to Mom's. I was like, oh, okay. And at the time I thought it was a normal thing, because her and her dad were trying to start a business at the time, and they're always at their mom's, so I didn't think anything weird of it until I stepped inside, and lots of her stuff was gone, and my daughter's stuff was gone, and the apartment was a wreck. And I get my service back up on my phone. I try to call her. I go over to her mom's house. No one's there. No one's answering the phone. Until I end up calling her mom, and her mom, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Where's my family? What's up? And her mom says to me, she doesn't want to be with you right now. She doesn't feel safe with you. She doesn't want to be with you anymore. And so I head back to my apartment, and for the first time in a long time, I just cried. I looked in the mirror at myself and really had to look at myself and ask, who am I? I felt so far away from God that I didn't even recognize myself anymore, physically, spiritually. My family's gone. I felt like I lost my purpose. And I didn't know what to do. So for the next 3 days, I ended up I call it an involuntary fast. I was real depressed, and I didn't eat for 3 days. I didn't drink anything, except I think I drank a few glasses of water. But I was just sitting in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. I didn't play any video games. I didn't watch any TV. It was just me, myself, and my thoughts, hoping and praying that my fiance would call me back and say that she wanted to work things out. That phone call never happened. And at the beginning of it, I was just on my knees, and I was yelling at God, and I demanded that He bring my family home. I demanded that He bring my family back, and I didn't hear anything from Him, except I did have an inner thought just kind of telling me, like, I haven't seen you in 2 years. We don't have a relationship. How can I help you? I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. You've been running. You said you didn't need me anymore. You're not under my protection. You're not under my guidance. you need to change. So, I had never really read the Bible before. I knew all the stories because of my mom, but I've never read the Bible. But there was just something in me that said, you need to open up your Bible. And I didn't even know where to look. Now I'm like a Bible guru. I know, I've read through like 95% of it. I love the Bible. I love listening to it, but I didn't know it at the time. So I was just like, I'm just going to flip open the Bible, and if God's real, He's going to give me a message that's going to help me out. And if He's not, then I'm not going to see anything, and I need to move on, because if there's no God, then this is pointless. I'm just a clump of cells, and I could honestly just die without worrying about it, right? There's no hell, there's no heaven. So I flip open the Bible, and the first thing that I see is the end of Job. Now, I've never read Job before. I know the premise of the story at the beginning, where God and Satan have a bit of a bet on Job. Satan basically says, if you would just take all these things away from, Job was basically a king in the area he was at. He had amassed a great amount of wealth. He had beautiful children, lots of oxen and donkeys and horses, right? He was a very rich man of good standing, and he was very righteous in God's eyes. And Satan says that if he were to take all these things away from him, then Job would basically curse God to his face, and he wouldn't be so righteous anymore. So God says to Satan, you can go down and you can torment with Job, you can do anything you want to him, but you can't kill him. That was the only boundary that Satan was given. He couldn't kill Job. And so Satan goes down and destroys all of his crops, takes all of his oxen. There's a whirlwind that destroys the house that his children were living in, and all of his children die. And it's just left with Job and his wife, and then Job still doesn't curse God, so Satan comes up and says, if you take Job's health away, then he'll curse you to his face. So God allows Satan to go down and put a sickness upon Job, and Job has these boils all over his body that is so bad that he starts scraping himself with the rocks just to try and get the pain to go away. And then Job's friends come over, and they've obviously seen all the destruction in Job's life, and they're questioning what Job did in order to basically have the wrath of God put upon him, because only a sinner gets the wrath of God put upon him, right? And so he goes through all these trials, and he doesn't end up cursing God to his face. And at the very end of Job, after Job passes all these tests and finally ends up getting to talk with God, God wins the bet with Satan, and he restores Job's health, and he restores Job's family. Job has more children with his wife, and he's got 3 daughters that are most beautiful in the land, and he accumulates all his wealth, right? So God, that's the part that I flipped open to, was God restoring Job to his former glory. And, I'm still not 100% sure what that means in my life. As of right now, I take that interpretation of restoration as God has restored me as a person. I've been restored as a Christian. I am actually much better now than I ever have been, even when I was a teenager. I'm much more level-headed. I'm much more spiritually on fire for God. I respect my parents now. My buddy Daniel, who I'm doing this channel with, I love him very much, and we work towards striving for God, and that's why we're doing this channel. And everything in my life now revolves around following God. It revolves around pursuing Him, and through that I have been blessed in so many ways. My fiance never came back to me. I'm leaving that up to God. I don't know if she will or not, but I did regain custody of my child. I can see her unsupervised. She can be over at my place. I get her every other weekend and every Wednesday for a few hours. Every other weekend I get her for the full weekend, right? So she gets to sleep over, and it's just my relationship with my daughter is mended. You know, she loves me. I love her, and everything is just going much better in my life. It's a lot more peaceful. It's not perfect, but I can confidently say that I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to be a follower of Christ. And I just want to say that wherever you're at in life, if you've ever committed a sin that you deem to be as bad as mine or even worse, God can work with you, and He can bring you from your face down, you know, in the mud. You never think you're going to get out of the trenches life, and He can bring you up, and He can show you what it truly means to live for Him is, and it's a beautiful thing. I wake up every single day wondering what God wants me to do next, and I have more purpose now in my life than I ever have, because my original purpose was just to make money and to do things for myself, but now I get to wake up every day and think, what can I do for someone else? What can I do for you, Lord? So I hope that this video helps you. I hope it helps you to understand who I am a bit better, and we will see you in the next video with Daniel talking about his life. So peace out, and have a great 4th of July.